Hello, Dr. Stickle. This is the first video for my second exam for the morphology exam. So in this one, I'm just going to kind of go into a deeper dive of my student, Austin Phillips. And so in front of me, I got my Word document that I'm submitting to you pulled up just with his general biography general profile. And then I've got some just additional notes to the side here too, just to make sure I hit all the target boxes. So in this video, I'm just going to kind of go into a little bit more depth of Austin himself and how I would first approach him when we're going to learn morphology and phonology and just all the ESL learning. So one thing that I do with all my students, and I know I've said this in previous videos, is just kind of get to know them first. Really, the first meeting I have with any student, we will really not cover any language learning or ESL learning at that point. That first meeting will always be just this is me, I want to get to know you, what are your interests, what is your motivation, just, things like that. Things that can help me better build a lesson for the student. And so I did some research since Austin is Polish. I did some research assuming he's just living the average Polish student life. And so I'll link this website in my document, but according to the Education Laboratory, most Polish students do not start learning a foreign language until grade 7. And at that point, that language is not always English. Apparently 67% of Polish people can speak and write some form of English, but there are other languages they learn. German was one that kind of popped up quite a bit. One interesting thing that I found, and definitely I will take into account when designing my lessons and activities and going into those in later videos for this exam, was that the average Polish student gets sent homework every single day. And about 56% of parents say their students are overburdened by their homework. So that definitely will play a part, because I want to make sure our activities that he has time to really do them. And if I know that he's not going to have much time outside of class, we really want to work to adapt to that. So Austin, like I said, is a 16-year-old male, and his motivation for wanting to learn English is because, he feels like it will, he feels like it will help him in the future with his voice acting career for video games. And so he'll have more career opportunities if he can speak clear English, or not clear English, but mainstream English. So there were also several different forms of secondary or high school in the Polish education system. And so forgive me if I pronounce these wrong, but Austin, I'm going to say, is in a technicum school learning marketing or studying marketing to be able to learn how to advertise himself. So he's already working towards that career goal and wants to learn how to market his own talents. And finally, another thing I would definitely keep in mind is, since Austin is in his last years of school, he's got the big test that determines if they get their diploma or not, the Matura, coming up. And so I definitely want to make sure, he's not feeling overwhelmed with learning ESL and from the homework from his other classes and with all these big exams coming up. So those are definitely things that we'll keep in mind when designing our activities for him and when I'm designing my activities for him to do. And so really, the main way I plan to approach Austin is I want to make his ESL not only feel relevant to his future career path in video games, but I also want to really work to tie it into that interest in video games and voice acting. So some of the activities we do may play into some voice acting. We may do some voice actings where I tell him I find some characters that speak mainstream American English, and his goal is to do an interpretation or an impression of that character. And so, which I'll go into more detail with that here in a little bit, but in some later videos. But that's just kind of a more in-depth look at Austin Phillips, my student I'm doing for this exam. And so, yeah, and I'll link that website below.